looking at the asteroid Lucifer because it was so prominent in your chart. And it turns out that the asteroid Lucifer is very hit and miss on being prominent for people. And this led me to my first sort of like observation that the dark man's appearance in a chart is not any one factor. It's something that we would call stacking testimony in astrology.
Okay.
If it's there, it will be repeated at many different levels. So yours was very planetary obvious, this exile fall thing. It's like super on the nose. So what I was finding in people's charts very rapidly was that Lucifer was not irrelevant, but I think a refinement on like which dark man do you get? What
Yeah.
are they like? But the thing that I clued into pretty quickly was that again and again there were two stars involved in everybody's stuff.
Hello, and welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. So it's really nice to be back on the pod after my couple of months off, and I had a really nice time. And very restorative. Did lots of reading, gardening, sitting around, and just back from a lovely trip in Turin with the Houses of Field people for Gin and Tonic 2. That was really a tremendous trip, and we talk about that a little bit in the Plus show about Turin and what a magical place it is. But today we have a very interesting guest joining us today. We welcome Elsa, who is an astrologer, and Elsa has been exploring the astrology, the charts of people who have had dark man experiences. So a few months ago, I asked Elsa if they'd be interested in coming on the Spirit Box podcast because they're a very interesting person in their own right. But they recommended they wanted to have something to talk about, so they decided to undertake this experiment with the members of the Spirit Box Discord. And that was to see if there was any correlations or identifiable patterns in the charts of those who've had dark man experiences or were exploring this territory. And the work surfaced some very interesting results. So Elsa starts the show by explaining how charts break down for the first 12 minutes or so. So if you're already well versed in that area, you might want to skip ahead. And then we delve into some of the evidence in my chart and discuss the parallels and contradictions in the charts of others. Now, I must say, we're not throwing out information willy-nilly of people's personal charts, so no volunteers were harmed in the process. But there really are some interesting things, and Elsa is at pains to explain that this is the levels of complexity to really identify a deep pattern. We're not there yet. This is the kind of foothills of this type of exploration. But Elsa also reviewed the charts of actors and artists who could be said to have dark man related themes in their work. For example, Keanu Reeves. So it's absolutely fascinating exploration, and really kind of reminds me of the work that I undertook in Irish mythology and folklore when kind of looking for the pattern of the dark man or the Fardov in that corpus of work. Now, in the Plus show, we get into a bit more detail on Keanu Reeves' chart, and we delve into some of the themes of John Wick as the Angel of Death, Revenging Angel. We also explore Billy Bob Thornton as Lorne Malvo, as the devilish assassin of the TV show Fargo. And we talk about how this type of research leads you into the process of shadow work. And there's very much a distinct pattern of on and off. There's when it's on, it's easy. You just do your thing. When it's off, it's really off. So it kind of gives you an idea and some context for how much this is a participatory process. You know, as individuals, we're not doing this alone. There is engagement around us that is making this happen and making it easy. And when it's not there for a reason. So And it also kind of takes you to the process of shadow work, and which Elsa points out that a lot of that is making sure the vessel, is ready to receive or is in the right shape, whatever that might mean, to receive the next tranche of information or where the journey is going to go further. So it's interesting stuff. And oh yeah, and when we also go through the chart or aspects of the chart of the famous psychic Eileen J Garrett. And you might recall her granddaughter was on the show a few months back discussing the diaries that have become the book Call Me Lucifer. So it's interesting stuff, and I'm sure by the end of this you'll be checking your chart. Now, there are a number of stars we discuss in this piece, including Aldebaran, Antares, Deneb Algidi, to name a few. I asked Elsa if there were any good resources that people could check out what these stars mean. And the recommendation really was to check out Sasha Ravich's work, or to give Elsa a shout if you're on the Spirit Box Discord. So there you go. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, before we get into the show, my book, Song of the Dark Man, Father of Witches, is now available for pre-purchase in all major bookstores and will be released in early August in North America and in early September rest of the world. There's a link where you can order it in the show notes. And if you hate books but you like the podcast, then you can always come on the Patreon and support the show. You get the full version of all of the podcasts and plenty of other bonus material. And there's a back catalogue of, I think, on pretty much 4 years now. So that sounds like your bag. Then come and join the fam. Okay, let's get on with the show. So, Elsa, you are very, very welcome to the Spirit Box. Lovely to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
It's brilliant to have you. And I'm trying to think. You might be one of the first patrons that have come on to the show solely from a discussion that came out of our Discord, which is fantastic. And I'm not going to try and explain this. You're the expert. Could you tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you ended up in the Spirit Box?
Yeah. So, long-time listener, first-time caller. Um, I enjoyed your podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts widely, and I have learned to discern over the years, like when something is juicy and when a podcast is kind of repeating things that have already been out there. And there's both are needed. But I'm an edge pusher. I like to be on the forefront of whatever's new and developing and happening. So I really enjoy your podcast because I feel like you are breaking ground and open to exploration in a way that other hosts are not suited to. You have this really open mind that I appreciate about just, I think because you came into magic a little bit later in life, not to spiritual experiences, but there's something about you where I think you're like, what the fuck do I know? Why wouldn't that be real or that be real? Um, so yes, I put my money where my interest was and joined the Patreon,
No,
which is a
thank you.
fun spot. It hits the sweet spot between like there's cool things happening and like this is like a second job to keep up with. Uh, yeah. So I don't remember how I got started in this. Oh, that's right. I was talking about astrology in your server because I do that everywhere I go. It's this creature that lives inside of my head and pushes all the buttons in my brain. Um, and I think it was just like a random like I was like, well, I could do your astrology, and you're like, yeah, I'm free, which is
Yeah,
incredible given the time difference and that you have like
yeah,
kids
yeah.
schedules and stuff. So I did that, and from my end, like I think it went okay. Um, there's times when I do a reading and like I'm not a professional astrologer. I'm just like an enthusiastic
Mhm.
hobbyist. And some of my readings are like incredible and they're just like, and there's all this gnosis flowing. And then other times it's just like, it's this car isn't starting. I can't get it
Right.
out of
Yeah.
park. Um, and the thing that I have figured out very frustratingly that is the key here is that things that are spontaneous work really well for me.
Oh wow.
I'm just like,
Okay.
"Yeah, let's do," like, "Yeah." Um, I can't go into it with an agenda. I can't go and going, "I'm gonna give a great astrology reading, and here's how I'm gonna do it." I
Right.
just have to bump along like a main character in a stoner comedy, basically. This is what it feels like. I can't plan. I can't, look in advance and like be tactical. I'm just like, I don't know. There's this weird thing. Let's look at this. Just chase the butterfly. So I did this in your chart, and it felt like I could not get traction and find the thing that I really needed to speak to or be about, which is just like it's sometimes excruciating, at least for me, because I'm like, this feels awkward and it's not right. And it's like a bad first date. And you're like, I don't know where to put my hands. Look at them right now. Like the anxiety is showing. Um, and eventually the dark man stuff came up and I looked at your chart and I was like, oh shit. Oh shit, this makes a lot of sense now. Um, so I don't know if you are comfortable with me speaking about your chart. People can be intensely private about it. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep my mouth shut unless you want me to
Well,
say
I think the interesting thing. First off, do you like my subtle background? Yeah.
it's very promotional of you, quite festive.
I've got a bunch of podcasts lined up, and I'm figuring I'm just gonna go for it. You know. Yeah, I might tone it
Oh,
down. We'll see. We'll see if we get any feedback on YouTube. Like, what the fuck, dude? Yes, we get it. We get you've written a book. Tone it down.
you
We'll
should
see
be.
what we
You're
got.
like a parent with showing everybody your baby pictures.
This
Like, of
this is it.
course.
This is
Like,
it. Yeah.
I feel sorry for the second book, which you're gonna be like, well, if it sells, it sells.
It's all right.
Whatever,
You
it's
know.
fine.
Okay.
You got the first one out. That was the most important. The second one's a spare, right?
I think the Darkman stuff absolutely is the interesting piece of that, and maybe we can talk to a couple of bits that you pulled out in my chart. Um, and the, I think one of the threads that you started on the Discord was around spotting those kind of elements that seem to be common with people who are having this experience, and you did a number of volunteers. Indeed, some quite very well known volunteers in the magical circles, um, volunteers for readings, for the purpose of seeing if there was a discernible pattern, um, shared characteristics, shared. Um, I was going to try and think of some sort of astrological term, but I don't know any. Stuff.
Totally. Like most
Yeah,
people don't start. So like, just you're normal, Dara. You're very normal in this one respect.
that one area. Yeah, it's a fair assessment. I got to own that one. Um, so let's start with there. What does that what are the components that you recognize would come up with some frequency, or the dark man stuff that you spotted for me?
Yeah. So I like you as a test subject for this because you are a person who is definitely plugged into this. Like you've now written a whole ass book about it. Like your chart is qualified to speak to the phenomena of the dark man.
Mhm.
Just like Usain Bolt's chart is qualified to speak about running. You
Yeah,
know, there you go. Um, so thinking about how to make this digestible for non-astrologers. So in astrology, there are planets. We know the names of many of these, most of us, Mars, Saturn, the sun. Hope everyone knows about the sun and the moon. Um, and there are 12 zodiac signs. And like when I say astrology, there are many astrologies out there. I'm going to get that out of the gate. There are many traditions from across time and space. They do not all 100% agree with each other on everything. So the astrology that I talk about here is fairly idiosyncratic to me, not just because I think everyone's astrology is, but because I am definitely like very chaotic in my practice. I'm like, oh, let's just see if this thing works when I do it. And then I do it and it works. And so that's what I do a lot of the time. And sometimes I found out like someone else had the same great idea in India 1,000 years ago. Great.
Right.
Um, and sometimes it's just my own kooky thing. So a lot of the astrology here is my own kooky stuff. Um, you will not maybe hear anybody else doing things like this, and which is probably well and good. I don't think anyone needs to be doing what I'm doing. So all that aside, you got planets in astrology, you got zodiac signs. Zodiac signs are like landscapes or places. You have a circle, a wheel, in some chart display styles in India. They often use square charts, which are displayed differently. But the ones I'm going to be talking about are the ones I'm familiar with. So the round chart's 360 degrees in a circle. For all of you skateboarding fans who can do this math really fast in your heads, because you know how many spins somebody does, we only do one lap, 360. There's no 540s or 720s. And so the wheel is divided into these 12 spaces, and I'm in the camp of traditional planets, which means ones that you can see with your naked eye, not a telescope. Traditional planets rule the zodiac. So each planet gets 2 signs to rule, except the sun and the moon. They only get 1 each. And so they all have these, like, I don't know, house and vacation home, or like they have 2 houses, like a city house, country house, however you want to think of it. The planets do this thing. And planets that are located in their home signs are said to be domiciled. Makes sense. That's your home. Planets that are in the signs opposite, 180 degrees away, these are said to be in exile
Okay.
because you're not at home. You're in the most foreign place that you could be, opposite your home. And then there are also exaltations, and exaltations are places where like the planet's like, I'm going to grandma's house and she's just going to give me everything I want. Like that's, you don't have a lot of responsibility. You get to have a lot of fun and you're like really well suited there and you get what you need and like it's a good time. Um, so the opposite of this exaltation is called the fall. It's like the place where nothing works for you. You don't have any of your stuff there that you need. It's nothing like the, it's bad. It's even worse than being in exile.
Right.
And different astrologers will say different things about which of these is more worse or better or whatever, not my problem. Um, so this concept of exile and fall, in your chart, Dara, you had Saturn and Mars in a partile conjunction, which means in the same exact degree, very precisely. This is like a thing that can happen once every couple of years because Saturn has a 3-year spin around the zodiac. I'm sorry, like a 30-year spin around the zodiac.
Right.
Saturn spends 3 years on a sign. Mars takes 2 months per sign. So eventually, like, I don't know, like different gears that eventually line up, they
Right.
will click.
Right.
This is pretty rare. An exact conjunction is a big deal. Like conjunctions have a window of acceptability where you're like, that's a thing. You're in proximity. It's like the difference between you and I can stretch out our arms and like touch each other with the fingertips
Hmm.
versus holding hands versus like arm around each other's shoulder versus like we're in a hug versus
Yeah.
like we're creating something new. Um, or one of us has eaten the other, cannibalism. So Saturn and Mars being in a partile conjunction in a sign that is Saturn's exile and Mars fall, um, in the sign of Cancer. So Saturn rules Capricorn, Cancer is opposite. So Saturn's in exile. Mars is exalted in Capricorn and it is in fall in Cancer. So this theme of like exile and fall for both of the malefics really fit the Lucifer falling from the heavens kind of deal for me. Um, and then I looked up the asteroid Lucifer, and that was in a partile conjunction with all of these things. They're like a minute apart each. That's slightly insane. Like mathematically, I don't know the percentages of that, like
Yeah.
bonkers. Um, and all of this was happening in the 11th house, and so that aside from the zodiac dividing up the wheel, you have these houses, and houses create topics. The first house is really you, big you stuff. It's you personally. The fourth is your literal physical home, can be your ancestry, can be your father. So you have these different topics. This is all happening in your 11th house, and that's the house of the good spirit, as opposed to the house of like no, sorry, good spirit, good fortune. I always get these mixed up. House of the evil spirit is the sixth house. Okay, house of good fortune. So 11th is the house of good fortune, and that you have this whole like messed up exile fall Lucifers, like they're all just in this sort of human centipede stack up with each other. Um, but it's in this like beneficial house, and it's in a good position, and like it's receiving this sextile from Venus, and like there's like this like mixture of like, really fucked up and like actually works out well for you. Um, and I say this as a person with my own fallen exiled
Yeah.
placements and stuff, like, I've got that too. It's not a death sentence for any non-astrologers listening to this, like, plenty of people have these who are very successful. Um, and, to this day, there's a lot of argument about what makes a successful and, like, happy chart, and it's never
Yeah.
what you expect. But for you, these 3 things piled up in the house placement they were, it was just like, this is so indicative of the fall from heaven
Yeah.
and coming to rule in hell and that kind of vibes if you're going with
Mm.
that sort of um, and that's when I finally looked into that stuff, into trying to give you a general reading, that's when it felt for me like, "Oh, this is clicking. This
Mm.
is I'm plugged in now." And then that came out, and then I looked more at your chart, and, like, everything in your chart damn near is in, like, a Mars or Saturn term, which are these subdivisions of the zodiac. If each zodiac sign is like a house, I mean, like an actual, mansion, then you can think of the terms as being like a specific room in the house. It's like
Mhm.
these 3 degrees here of this sign are ruled by this. These 4 degrees over here are ruled by this other thing.
Mm.
All of your stuff was in Mars and Saturn terms. Um, and so that was like, oh, this is just doubling up on the
Yeah.
malefics as they're
Yeah.
known in astrology. So like very, very heavy metal chart there. Um, yeah, good job. I know you I know you did that. Um, actually, maybe congrats to your mom, who's the most metal of all, for making this happen at the right time. But I looked at that, I was like, "Oh, that's kooky." And then, I don't know, months later, whenever the time happened,
Yeah.
um, I was thinking about this, like, I had that in the back of my mind, and it was cooking for a while, and I'd look at
Yeah.
other stuff, and then, I don't remember what got me onto this. I think you just, like, invited me onto the podcast because I was being the opposite of a dipstick in the server. Um, the
But
word isn't coming to me right now, but
you mentioned them. I think what it was is you mentioned something about or I can't remember. There was some sort of conversation. One of us mentioned the Lucifer in my chart that you found. Or I think I referred to you, and then a couple of other people. Oh, that's really cool. Could you do me a reading? And then you came back. Well, actually, I want to do. I need some volunteers to actually look at how we can start to determine people who've had this experience or an equivalent or in this current in some way. um let's have a look at the charts. And you instantaneously got a few volunteers.
yeah,
You,
nothing like saying free readings to chum the waters.
yeah, 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 to a bunch of witchy magician people.
Yeah, sure. And just the right group because, there's other camps of witchy people who'd be like, "You will never see my chart. I buried it under a rock at the bottom of a well." Um, you have to have people who are, like, have certain security protocols or not,
Yeah.
um, or it's just the right group. Yeah, so I remember you invited me onto the podcast, and I was like, "Well, what the hell am I gonna talk about?" I mean, like,
Mm.
it sounds cool, and of course, like, the moment you messaged me on the Discord about
Yeah.
this, I checked the astrology the moment and, to my chart, and I was like, "Oh, this is this is a big deal. Moon's, like, a minute away from my midheaven. Okay, this is something. I don't know what the fuck it is." So I was like,
Right.
"Yeah, sure. Okay, so we'll think," and then it hit me later that dark man astrology. So the first thing I did, um, is I took up my pendulum and contacted my main intercessory spirit. And I was like, I'm thinking about doing this Dark Man astrology project. Do you know the Dark Man? Like, can you get a hold of him? Because if
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, it makes sense to have approval or like
Yeah.
buy-in
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck no, don't look at me. Then, I'm not going to invade someone's privacy. Like, I don't know. Like, so it was funny because I've been working pendulum long enough with enough practice, and I know this spirit well enough that I get some flavor
Hmm.
through the pendulum and the qualities of motion, but also just sort of like a sense. Um, and I'm going to preface all this. I'm not super psychic. I don't have
Yeah.
grand conversations or visions or any of this stuff. I just sometimes know things.
Yeah.
I don't know why I know them when I just it's totally random, unpredictable. And every once in a while, like I get some kind of clear communication, which I'm constantly back checking. By like, I think you just said this. Is
Hmm.
that correct? And I get a yes or a no.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm going to elide all of that just by going. The sense I got from my familiar was like, yeah, I know him. Um, I think I can get you together. And this whole like restrained mirth, kind of like, ha ha ha, this is gonna be so funny. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, like, I don't know what the joke is. Um, so I coordinate and I was like, well, here you go. Like, if I'm gonna do this thing, I want your support. I want you to send me the right people to have their
Yeah.
astrology done. I want the schedules to work out. Like I want the path greased. This is,
Mm.
I'm doing this for you. You're getting publicity or whatever. Maybe you just like being watched. I don't know like what your deal is, but you're getting something out of this.
Yeah.
Make it easy on me. And it was like, cool, yeah, everything you need, I'll make sure you get it.
Yeah.
Great. And then I checked with you that it was okay to run a research project on your patrons. It was all volunteer, of course, but so I did that, and yeah, tons of people volunteered. And then from there, it was funny how easily the readings worked out, and I think this
Okay.
is most fascinating part of the process for me, was to get, like, my first live encounter of there's a spirit who wants something done, and I am a part of that,
Hmm.
um, and the timing is completely out of my control. Like, all of this is out of my control. I just end up at the right space at the right time, according to no schedule that I could discern.
Yeah.
Um and so people would message, and sometimes it'd be like, "Oh, yeah, and are you free right now?" "Yeah, actually, I am." There was a lot of that.
Right.
There were times when it didn't work out, like, someone's like, "I actually can't make it today," for whatever reason, and in the intervening time until I did read their chart, I'd keep doing my thing, wandering around, smelling the flowers and seeing what's good.
Hmm.
And then by the time I did read their chart, it was something that had happened in the intervening time, turned out to be very crucial for reading their chart
Right.
well.
Okay.
So there was a lot of that, like, strange delays that turned out in hindsight to be exactly what was needed. Um, and there are people in the server whose charts I have not read, who seem like they would be really important to read, and it has not worked out. And so I'm
Right.
just like, everything I say today is absolutely part one of I don't know how many parts to this.
Hmm.
Um, it is still unfolding over time. I'm going to tell everybody right now who's on the edge of your seat, there is no super final conclusion here.
Yeah.
Um, it's like phase one of a multi-phase study, and I don't even know if I'm gonna be doing the other phases. Maybe somebody else needs to take this up. I don't
Sure.
know. Out of my control. Um, so I did, I think at least a half a dozen readings for people, if not more at this point, and I also started looking at celebrity charts. People I was like, "Well, let me look at people who played the devil in a movie."
Right. Okay.
Um So I looked at a bunch of those folks, and then from there, it was like looking at charts of people who have make devil sculptures or devil art, or the music just gives me a feeling. Um, so after a couple readings for folks, I was looking at the asteroid Lucifer because it was so prominent in your chart, and it turns out that the asteroid Lucifer is very hit and miss on being prominent for people. Um, And this led me to my first sort of like observation that the dark man's appearance on a chart is not any one factor. It's something that we would call stacking testimony in astrology.
Okay.
If it's there, it will be repeated at many different levels. Um, so yours was very planetary obvious, this exile fall thing. It's like super on the nose. Uh, and it also had this asteroid to further be like, did you get the message? Because Lucifer's in the pile here too. Um, And I think I looked up that asteroid because, like, well, do you have any spirits that you work with that are really prominent? Let
Mm.
me, okay, let me pop in Lucifer. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so what I was finding in people's charts very rapidly was that Lucifer was not irrelevant, but I think a refinement on like which dark man do you get? What
Yeah.
are they like? Um, the thing that came up big time was, and like let me preface this. I did a spreadsheet. Like I'm not just talking out of my ass here. I know I'm seem kind of like chaotic. I have memory issues, which is why I'm so good about my spreadsheets. Um, I mapped out everybody's planetary placement by zodiac sign and decan and term, I think. Went through it all, what sect they belong to, if they were day birth or night birth, that's sect. I looked at the rising sign house placements. I looked at where did asteroid Lucifer fall into, like where's the part of fortune. I looked at all this stuff. I made a spreadsheet. Um, Mathematically, there was nothing super compelling about most of it. But the thing that I clued into pretty quickly was that again and again there were two stars involved in everybody's stuff. And those stars were Antares and Aldebaran. And so in astrology, you've got the planets. We've got our local star, the sun. That's the center of our galaxy, universe, whatever. Our
Yeah.
local habitation is the sun. That's our big deal. The stars are outside of the planets, obviously, or we'd have another one in our system. They're big, they're huge. They emit energy very powerfully. They generate energy in a way that the planets do not. They produce light, they produce heat, they do, whatever all electromagnetic wave stuff that they send out. So these two stars were in everybody's chart doing something. Um, and the people who write about, like you have your midheaven right on Aldebaran. Your midheaven is a place of great prominence and visibility. You have become very visible around this dark man thing, and Aldebaran is currently in the sign of Gemini, which is an air sign ruled by Mercury and is very favored for writers. So that your midheaven landed on Aldebaran, which is currently due to the stars move a little bit every year, like 8 minutes or something, which is a fraction of a degree. So, 1,000 years ago, Aldebaran was in the sign of Taurus. And right now it's in Gemini. Um, so if you're having things exact on Aldebaran, they're going to be concurrently kind of Gemini flavored. So people who write a lot about Lucifer or the devil are going to have these midheavens or ascendants or something that are on that Aldebaran stuff. And if anyone's listening who's not math inclined, just let this wash over you. Ignore it. It's not here to hurt you. Um, uh, so Aldebaran and Antares are a fascinating pair of stars because they are like 180 degrees opposite each other, almost perfectly exactly. It's super close. So they are locked in this opposition, this head-to-head face-off kind of thing. And so if you have a planet conjunct one or an angle conjunct one, then you're going to have opposite the other one. And there's sort of like strength rankings of aspect relationships in astrology. Conjunction is the strongest, and you'll have people say it's not an aspect. Whatever, calm down. um, the opposition, 180 degrees apart, is the next strongest. The trine, which is 120 degrees apart, third, and the square is the fourth. And so, you have your circle of 360. You divide it in two, you get 180. You divide it into fourths, you get 90. If you divide 360 into thirds, you get 120. Um, If you divide it into six, you get 60. So if you have a planet conjunct Antares, it'll be opposite Aldebaran. If you have a planet that is square, that's 90 degrees to Antares, it's automatically square to Aldebaran. If you have one that is trine one of these stars, it'll be sextile the other star. There's always you can't be in relationship with one without the other. They come as a pair. Um, if you have a Perron's relationship, which is a whole other ball of wax, I'm not even going to try to explain that one. Go watch a video on YouTube. There's a lot of them out there at this point. A Perron's relationship can help you pick up one and not the other because of what is going on with that. So there's some edge cases, like if you have a midpoint on one, that's where, say you have a planet here and a planet there, the midpoint's going to be halfway in between. Um, if a midpoint lands on it, the far midpoint will land on the other one. So they come as a pair. Um, they're extremely prominent in my own chart. And so once I figured out what was going on with this, I realized why my familiar had been laughing when I was like, "Do you know the dark man is my main spirit?" Like, as it turns out, like this phenomena is linked to things that are deeply entangled in my chart. That's what the whole joke was like, "Oh yeah, you think you want me to get him? Sure, I could do that." It's like me asking for the president of a secret spy organization, and it turns out it's my dad, right? Like, it's like, "Oh, you know, great, great, joke's on me." So I cracked up really hard during this. So everyone's got this Antares Aldebaran stuff, and I was not expecting that. I was expecting Lucifer to be involved, but in
Yeah.
retrospect, it has made a lot of sense. I have come to understand, and I haven't read your book yet, Dara. When it's out, I'll be on it. Um, I've listened to some episodes of the podcast, and something that strikes me, which is I really appreciate the way that you have space for many different experiences of this phenomena. And you're
Mhm.
not out there telling people, well, that couldn't have been the dark man because the dark man's like this. Um, you accept the overlap and you do not challenge the non overlap in the Venn diagram of your experiences and other people's experiences.
Mhm.
Um, so this Aldebaran and Tari's thing for me explained a lot of the diversity of dark man experiences and how I would characterize the difference between these 2 stars, and I gotta give a shout out to Sasha Ravage, like, right now. Um, her work absolutely cracked open the stars for me, made them make sense, has been my best and first guide.
Mhm.
Her podcasts, amazing. Her classes and appearances that she makes, amazing. I've been on her Patreon for a year or 2 now. Her writing's on there, incredible. And also shout out to everyone on her Discord server who puts up with my maximum astrology feral chaos as I go into all this stuff, and has shared their own experiences that
Yeah.
helped flesh this out to me. So I would not be where I am speaking today without
Mhm.
all those folks. Um,
Yeah,
so,
Sasha's awesome.
just it's not many people I would say are worth a 6-month wait for an appointment, and I like, should I hype her up more? Does she need to be booked out 3 years from now? It will be what it will be. Um, so through a lot of this, her she gave me the scaffolding to start exploring this and frame it up. And so the biggest tier, the biggest, highest organizational level that I would look at Aldebaran and Antares through is through the concept of yin and yang. Um, for people who aren't familiar with traditional Chinese medicine isn't just the medicine, it's everything. It's the philosophy, it's
Yeah.
life, it's cooking, it's all kinds of stuff. But this, the Taoist concept of yin and yang is really influential on this and deeply tied into this. And to shorthand it, yin is darkness and yang is light. Yin is formless
Yeah.
and yang is form. And yin is cool and dark and sort of replenishing in that restful way. And yang is generative and productive and exerting, active. Um, you have kind of these two modes. And when lower down from that, you might see Antares is, and Aldebaran would be like the sprouting of the grain that grows into the wheat that then nourishes the people.
Hmm.
And Antares would be, and then they poop, and then they put it on the ground, and that replenishes the soil, and then the wheat grows good the next time. It's almost like two halves of the life death cycle. Like I have a hard
Yeah.
time saying it's the death cycle because it's still alive and doing things. It's just not doing things that I'm on the half that I'm a part of is
Yeah.
not that half. So it's all the life cycle. It's the existence cycle. So Antares, whereas Aldebaran might be growth, Antares might be decay, depending on
Right.
your
Okay.
perspective of what that is. Um,
That's super interesting. Because uh, I mean, how I would interpret that, and kind of what's popping into my head now is like the two horns of the dark man in his horned manifestation. There's a constant theme about non-dualism that comes up in his work, like in his work. Christ, um, forgive me. But in a way, like so much of how he manifests in the various different forms is a living metaphor for non-dualism. Like in the kind of the therianthropic combined human animal form, it's human and it's animal. It's wild and it's civilized. It's constantly playing those opposites. Which I also think is a bit of a joke as well. You know,
yes. So so that organizational level, eh, I'm gonna keep going and I'm gonna come back in a really
yeah, yeah,
big
yeah.
loop
Go
and
for it, go for it.
go on that with what you just said. Um, so another way that I would look at it, if it was tarot, um, Antares would be the king of swords for me, and Aldebaran would be the king of discs. Antares feels more intellectual and cerebral, whereas Aldebaran can feel more visceral, physical. And it's not to say that this is 100% exclusive, that
Right.
Antares cannot be physical. It's just biggest gesture, biggest, broadest, most common sort of expression. Um, so I often perceive them as brothers. For those of you who read the Dragonlance books back in the day,
I did.
um, the twins, Raistlin and Caramon,
Yeah.
Raistlin with his wasting hourglass eyes and magical skills,
Hmm.
big Antares vibes. Caramon,
Yeah.
strong, devoted, loyal. Sometimes you need a guy who can lift a beam off another guy.
Hmm.
That's big Aldebaran vibes.
Yeah. Test of the twins. All right, I gotta listen. Be just a short interjection, totally off topic. But I think you'll enjoy this. Is that when I was in third year in secondary school, I guess about 15, something like that. Um, our English teacher, who was named Ignatius Flannery, was my English teacher's name, right? And he seemed about 200 at the time, right? But very very old dude. And he said like we'll do a thing where people can come in and read read the book you're reading, and I thought this was a great idea, and I brought in fucking the dork, the fucking dorkiest, brought in this book. Yeah, there was like the test of the twins and all that, and there was like one duel section, which I thought was fucking amazing. That was like just an amazing visceral fight, and it must have gone on for about 5 6 pages, and I read it out to the class, right, to the point where I was like on page three. I'm like, I'm just droning on, reading out this like fantasy duel to the class, right? To the
The
point where Mr. Flannery interjected, goes, "I think we leave it there, Dara."
the next time I take my little two puffs and I'm blazed out of my saddle, I'm gonna time travel back to third year Dara and be like, bro, you are more fucking cool than you realize.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Go back in time and do that for you.
I didn't get a wide appreciation at the time. I can tell you. I can tell you that there was just like, what the fuck? Oh god, talk about a blast in the past. There, I totally forgot about that. You reminded me with that book. Yeah,
It's in the blood, Dara. It's in your
yeah,
chart.
yeah.
Well, this brings up something really fun about that, which is that so Gemini is the sign of the twins,
Mhm.
and the stars don't always stay in the same zodiac sign, as I mentioned before, the precession. But I think there's something really important to in our living memory now in this time. This is how we are experiencing these things. And in other times, 1,000 years ago, when Aldebaran was in Taurus, maybe all this felt very different. That the
Mm,
Dara of 500 BC was like, actually, there's lots of dualism, and these are very separate beings. Like maybe, and that was true then. Different things are true now. Like
right.
I don't. But presently, Aldebaran is in Gemini, sign of the twins, and they're like it is both identical twins and opposite twins. It is
Mhm.
the good twin and evil twin simultaneously. It is the mortal twin and the immortal twin in a lot of mythologies. Meanwhile, Antares is hanging out in the zodiac sign of Sagittarius, and that is a half man, half horse.
Mm,
Uh, it is this union of man and animal, of reaching for and perceiving the stars and having your hooves on the ground. Um, not just two of them, but four whole things attached to the ground. Um, Twice as grounded as the average human being walking on their feet. There is this sense of bridging, of splitting and union at the same time, of being a lot of paradox. I love a lot of paradox for these two signs. And so I think that the man animal, uh, that the bestial, civilized, like all those dichotomies, I
yeah.
think experiencing the dark man through you are both of these things at the same time and possibly is our current living experience of this, and makes sense to me that we're having that.
Mhm.
um, so yeah, so those twins could be a great way of perceiving them. I have also perceived them as from the show Penny Dreadful. um, you've got the main character Vanessa,
Mhm.
and she's spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen this show that came out like many years ago. There are two big bads in that TV series, and one is always hidden. You never really see who it is, always in the shadows. It's a voice, it's like a vague form through smoke. And it is the devil, but it's very hidden and very obfuscated. And the other big bad is a Dracula, and it's not the Dracula, it's just a vampire. Um, and this being, this other protagonist, antagonist, whatever, um, this guy is very like he just looks resplendent. He looks like a piece of gold made into a human form. Like he's just radiant and has that glow that's like, ah, that's a very healthy person. Like that just got the vibes. Um, and Vanessa, the main character, is sort of stuck between these two. They both like the devil wants her soul, and the vampire wants her body.
Yeah.
Um, and they want these different parts of her. And that was a really fun series because the vampire was the very like young, vital Aldebaran looking character,
Yeah.
whereas the devil in the series was a much more vampiric, obfuscated, hiding, cold. They used a lot of cool colors and lighting when it came to the
Right.
devil.
Okay.
Blue gray smoke,
Mm,
whereas the Dracula figure was like illuminated by candlelight, had all this warmth and bronziness about him. Um, so it was a juxtaposition of like their image and roles in a very
yeah.
cool way. So I would look at in that series, the devil was the Antares
Mm.
character, and the vampire was the Aldebaran character. Um,
That's
and
super interesting. And again, it's broadly thematically how you're describing that is a theme that I do kind of speak to in the book, because it's one of the there's kind of two levels to how the current interacts with people. Obviously, without laboring the point, in between those two levels, there's minutiae and strata and all that kind of stuff, right? But because broadly, how I see it is the current directly communicates or initiates with those of a magical bend. Um, it's a very kind of direct link in in some ways, and then kind of more broadly, but no less powerful, is almost through the two individual diamonds with people who've got a creative current. I see the creative current and the magical current is completely intertwined, and that manifests in stories, it manifests in songs, it manifests in art. So to hear that kind of very good match to the polarity between these two stars in a kind of a magical paranormal, and kind of is a wonderful show, Penny Dreadful, right? A very rich show. Like, it was lovely kind of texture to it. Describing kind of the set design and how those shots were set up to be slightly different and demonstrate that difference. It's like, it wouldn't surprise me if the people who were doing the set design, who they were writing, had some of that current flowing through them.
And
Totally unconsciously. I'm not saying that, like,
that's tracks 100% with the celebrity studies that I did, to look at people who are involved with this. And I happen to have 3 friends who are professional writers, like, you can go to Barnes& and Noble and buy their book, who have all done anthologies or entire novels or novel series that heavily feature the devil.
yeah,
So I was, like, texting, I was like, "Hey, can I have your chart for this astrology study?" And they're like, "Yeah." All of them had it. None of these 3 people are practitioners.
right,
They're not magically operant, like, they don't do any of this stuff.
yeah,
They think it's cool, they write books about it, they don't do it.
yeah,
All of them were plugged in this way. When I looked at, the charts of people who, played the devil in films, like Tim Curry, if
yeah.
you remember him from, I think it was Legend,
Legend, yeah.
he makes that extremely sexy red devil with the enormous bull horns, and he's just, like, muscular
Yeah,
and, like,
he really is, isn't he?
ready to be on the cover of a romance novel. He's got a son, Aldebaran Nadir Perons, which
Right.
is deep foundational with his solar energy, that radiance, and that Aldebaran comes through.
Mm,
Um, he's a huge Aldebaran figure. And something I wanna backtrack a little bit to the Penny Dreadful stuff is that Antares, which, for a little context, there are zodiac signs, and you've got, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, etc. And then you've got constellations of stars, which inspired the zodiac but are separate things.
mhm.
Um, the zodiac is conceptual. It's a division that people make, and how they make that division depends on the astrology tradition. I do tropical. It works for me. Um, the constellations are different. So we have the zodiac sign Scorpio, and we have the constellation Scorpius. And to make it even worse, sometimes the constellations are named the same thing as the zodiac sign. Like, you've got Sagittarius and Sagittarius.
Right.
Um, so Scorpius and Scorpio. Um, so Antares is the heart star of the Scorpius constellation. Um, and Aldebaran is the red eye of the bull of the Taurus constellation. And so this, like, bull imagery around Aldebaran comes up a lot. This is something I've seen myself many times. So anytime you've got the big horns, for me, that's an Aldebaran flag.
Right.
If you've got the big fangs, that's an Antares flag. Um, Sasha Ravitch was the one. If I just say Sasha from now on, everybody know it's Ravitch. Um, uh, she has found the Scorpius constellation to be very vampiric and linked it to spiders, especially the tail stars in the Scorpius constellation, Aculeus and Acumen. And so the way that opened up Antares for me as being, or sorry, Scorpius as being more than just the scorpion. It's all things that like feed on blood. It is the tick and it is the spider. It's all these things that stick their fangs in and drink, that liquefy and sort of decay their prey. And I know that like scorpions have, I've never really wanted to look deep into a scorpion's mouth, but I know they have chewing things in there. So it's not like a venom that dissolves quite
Yeah.
like the spider, but these are gestures. The scorpion does have poison in the tail and stings. Um, so this sort of like vampire on one hand, devil on the other hand kind of thing. And you can get blendings of both of these. But like I said, Tim Curry, Aldebaran, big Aldebaran vibes. He shows up as a huge red devil. Um, there were Peter Stormare, who was in Constantine as Lucifer.
A
Um,
very good depiction of Lucifer.
yeah, and I looked into this. He was like, they wanted him to be a certain kind of Lucifer. He was like, no, 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 let me do it this way. Trust me. And they did. And so that's how he did that freaky ass,
Yeah.
that big Antares stuff, not
Right.
Aldebaran stuff.
Right.
So Peter Stormare is a great Antares version of the devil, whereas Tim Curry in Legend is a great Aldebaran version of the devil. Um, very visually extremely striking examples that I think
Mm.
get across the aesthetics and the vibes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um.
I think, oh, Keanu Reeves. So this is a funny thing. The like mathematically, I was expecting many other things than what I found when I did the spreadsheet. Most of the people that I looked at had Virgo rising. And this is relevant to everybody because Virgo rising puts um, Gemini on the 10th and Sagittarius on the 4th. And the 10th is career. The 10th house is career. And so, what people produce, their work, what's in the 10th house is going to be what you see. What's in the 4th house is where they come from, their literal home, their ancestry, that kind of thing. So, Virgo risings have this very visible um, Gemini, like 10th house stuff. And Antares being naturally more hidden, like the spider and the scorpion and all these beings, they don't generally do well when things can see them. They hunt at night, like scorpions, or they try to camouflage or hide themselves. Antares is hidden a lot of the time and obfuscated, which is why I think that that way that the devil figure in Penny Dreadful was never shown. Huge Antares vibes. Whereas like a bull or a cow, like you you have to literally be blind, like no vision
Mhm.
to not see one of those coming at you.
Mm.
Um, there's nothing subtle about a bull. There's nothing particularly hidden about it. Um, so the Aldebaran stuff I think is really easy to spot in people, and Tari's people are harder to find.
Right.
The Aldebaran stuff, highly visible. Um, so I found a bunch of Aldebaran people. I struggled to find more Antares folks, but in any case, so Virgo risings have Gemini on the 10th and um, Sagittarius on the 4th. And it creates this like you're balancing between both of these. And an example I want to give is Keanu Reeves. He's been in 3 different movies as one who fights the devil or has to deal with the devil on some level.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put on my looking at spreadsheet computer face while I go check my notes. Yeah, what was he in? Okay, so in Constantine, he was the combination vampire hunter exorcist.
Yeah.
Talking about a Swiss Army knife of dealing with evil stuff. In Dracula 1992, he played Jonathan Harker, who was the lawyer serving Dracula.
That's right.
And that Dracula was really interesting because he, Gary Oldman in that embodied, I think, both of these stars together. There were times when he was like old and decrepit and decayed and like very in that spider Antares mode when he was super old and first encountered. Um, but then he drinks blood, becomes young again, and is like sexy Gary Oldman, who is enticing Winona Ryder. And is like he's rich and he's got nice clothes and he's got the glow and there was another time in that movie where he turned into this like ferocious bat creature, fornicating in the park with Winona Ryder's best friend. So there's like these big elements of like the decayed, decrepit body, and then also this like extremely virile, sexual, fornicating, like
Beast.
I'm here to sweat, making the beast with two backs. Um, had all those vibes. So that was like an all-in-one package of the Antares Aldebaran
Mm.
experience in different parts of that movie. So in that one, uh, Keanu Reeves is playing this lawyer who's, sent out to serve the Dracula figure and ends up fighting and doing all this kind of stuff, tangling with that. And then he played in The Devil's Advocate, he played Kevin Lomax, son of the devil, where he had to figure out, like, am I gonna fight this guy? Am I gonna join this guy? What are we
Yeah.
gonna do? Um, and I think that's also offered to Constantine at different points, is like, well, if you joined up with me, it would be much better. Or like, we don't, like, there's
Mm.
this tension between, we're fighting. Do we need to fight? Could we team up? Do you not
Yeah.
want to team up? Here's your moral conundrum.
Mm.
Uh, and the devil in The Devil's Advocate was another one of those combo punches where it's a lawyer, which is very Antares feeling to me as like the
Yeah.
kind of King of Swords figure. But it was also this deeply sensual, like drink the fine liquors and
Mm.
do cocaine off young nubile bodies and like just revel in the sensory pleasures of life.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of like decadent opulence, like in a kind of an '80s, late '80s vibe. You
yeah,
know.
that's your
It-
tornado glass wall and your neon lights
yeah.
at home.
Yeah.
Um, so
I
that
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Keanu Reeves as this clued me into like Virgo placements that are around the degrees of, let's say, like, I'd probably give it like 6 to 14 degrees of Virgo. Um, Anything that you have there, whether it's an angle, like the ascendant or the midheaven or whatever, or if it's you got a planet there, or you're part of fortune or something, um, those things in your chart are going to be dealing with, like, I'm not even gonna say the angel and the devil on the shoulder. It's the one kind of devil and the other kind of devil, and the conundrum is, do you join or not?
Hmm.
Um, and there's this negotiating between them, balancing them, of like trying to mediate this. And so these Virgo placements turned up as being a big deal for that. I think that like 1/3 of people that I looked at had Virgo rising, which is
Yeah.
nuts
Mm.
statistically. Like there's a 1 in 12 chance of anybody being any rising sign, more or less.
Okay.
30%. That's 4 times what it should have been.
Yeah.
Was huge for this.
That's really interesting. I was just thinking as well when you're saying that, like with like the John Wick series, you know, he is, he is a man in black. He's almost the faceless man of black. He's called the boogeyman, Baba Yaga, you
Whew.
know, in it
Yeah,
as well. You know,
yeah. And that's, I mean, there's something, someone pointed out, I think it was Jen and Sasha Server, and if I got this wrong, I'm sorry, everybody. Someone pointed out that in the movie The Matrix, Keanu Reeves, and let me say, let me check his chart real quick, because it's so specifically up in this. Keanu Reeves. Great. Okay, so he's got his ascendant is at 14 degrees Virgo, and he's got his Sun, Mercury, Uranus, and Pluto all within range of 9 degrees for his Sun and 14 degrees for his Pluto. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 different planets piled up within a few degrees of each other, squaring both of these stars. So I cannot emphasize enough how involved he is in all of these
yeah.
things. Um, so when you look at the Matrix movies, he's given a choice between, do you want to stay ignorant or do you want to know?
Mm.
And he goes, no. And so he leaves this world of like decadent pleasures and like, I mean, compared to life outside the matrix, right? Where you're
Yeah.
eating your protein slop and everything's cold and no one looks sexy anymore. Um, the lighting's just really bad for people when they
Yeah.
leave the matrix. The he's plunged into like this really like ugh, this is gross and it sucks and it feels bad.
Mm,
You have fallen out of heaven there. And later on, when he's battling Agents Smith and the machines and all that, like he will like dive into them and explode them from the inside out. And someone was like, "That is so Antares pilled."
mm,
Um, what do you mean you injected them with something from yourself, in this case, his self, and exploded,
mm,
melted your enemies from within, like big Antares vibes. So I would say his characters in different movies wield these powers of
yeah.
Aldebaran and Antares, whether he is a lawyer, whether he is this like super strong whatever. I haven't seen his entire filmography, so like I don't know how Bill and Ted factor into this. Um, I don't know yet. Let me put it that way. Um, but this as an actor, it's really wonderful to look at his career and to contemplate these stars and how he's so often between them. And like you said in the John Wick movies, he was an assassin,
Mm,
big Antares vibes. Um, he was an assassin. He got out of it. Honor was disturbed. Aldebaran is a huge. I would say all the stars, all beings have their own code of honor that if they go against it, they weaken themselves.
mm,
Uh, there's no identical codes of honor. So I would say in that way that I think all stars and all plants and all stones and all planets can be healing, and all of these things can be damaging, and all of these things can speak to any concept in a certain way. Um, that Aldebaran is a star of honor, big time oaths and pact keeping. Um, as you'll see this in many cultures going back to Babylonians, and the gods that they associate with these stars, like Marduk and Shamash, Ahura Mazda and Mithra are some of them. There's you have to I wouldn't say do what you say. I would say that there is strength. One of the lessons of Aldebaran is that there is strength in staying focused. And when you say, I will do this thing, you're also saying, I will not do that thing.
mm,
And it provides direction or guidance, or I would say like the banks of a stream focus the stream. Um, oaths and pacts and honor are the banks of your stream. And if you erode those, your water kind of just vaguely floods things and doesn't go anywhere. Aldebaran is really into like not shoring those up, but Aldebaran people are tend to be very honor focused, and that doesn't necessarily look like a generic form of honor. It may be unique to them, but it's crucial to them and their power that they stick to that.
okay.
Um, I think Antares has its own honor. I don't wouldn't say I understand it yet. But for Aldebaran, I see those things come up. So in the John Wick movies, there is a question of honor that arises of like these guys came in and killed his dog, and you do not do that. And John Wick is like, you could have done a lot of things, and I wouldn't have done this, but you broke a rule,
Yeah.
and it was his rule. Someone else, their dog gets killed, they wouldn't go on a murder spree of like I don't know what the body count was by the end of that series. Um, but it's a matter of honor for him, and in
Yeah.
the pursuit of that, he can accomplish everything.
Well, listen, it's been fabulous to have this chat, and it's so interesting hearing about how you've delved into this and kind of what you found. I imagine everyone's googling to see if they've got Fargo Rising, you know, and what have you.
Yeah, yeah.
I do, don't I?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm pretty sure. Because I forget all the time. I'm so bad at this stuff. Um, but that's yeah, so interesting. So thank you so much for giving us your time this evening, and hopefully, you know, if this is a thing that you pursue, obviously not planning to, we'll see how the cards fall. Then you know you're obviously very welcome anytime to come and have a chat.
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
if it happens, I think
Mhm.
it'll be good.
Yeah. I mean, normally this is the point where I ask people, if people want to contact you or what have you. Um, Equally, you're like, I don't want people to contact me.
Um, I certainly enjoy a random encounter. I don't have a website. I don't have social media that's not, like, locked on private. I don't
Yeah,
use public facing social media.
yeah,
I'm basically there to, like, find memes. I
yeah,
don't really tweet or I have one post on Instagram from 7 years ago. Um, I don't post, I don't respond to things.
yeah,
But I am really active on Sasha's server because that's where I do all my astrological explorations because the
yeah,
the crowd there is just the right mix of people for
mm,
like there's enough people who are willing to like come ride in my motorcycle sidecar on the excursions that I take in astrology. And of course I'm on your
yeah.
spirit box server. So I'm, available there for questions and stuff. I don't expect a lot of people to want to contact me. I guess if you really do, join the Patreon for a month and
Yeah,
find me on Discord or something, or if you're on
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sasha's.
yeah. Good,
Um,
good. I mean, obviously, you know how much I complain about social media all the time, so I approve of this stance.
I like it. Like I don't seem to take psychic damage from it. I just keep it moving past stuff. I don't want to like. I'm like, it's another argument. Whatever. Show me. It's my number
Yeah.
one source of great art.
Hmm.
Oftentimes I'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna scroll through my feed. Ooh, that's a painting that reminds me of that star.
Mm,
And it's my place to go like, it's very easy for, I think, spirits to throw stuff at me through social media.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, I've
so
had
it's
that happen. Yeah,
useful it's
yeah,
useful for me, the
yeah.
mix of accounts that I have, the things that I follow, that I keep my stuff on private. I
Mm,
don't have to deal with bots and all that. So I think I've found the sweet spot of dealing with social media for me. And I certainly enjoy
mm.
Discord.
Yeah,
I like conversations with people there and, um that it tends to be a bit of a self-selecting crowd.
right.
Um, and as of yet, no algorithms just plopping random people into your feeds there. As of
Wonderful,
yet.
wonderful, fantastic. Well, we'll wrap it up there. That was an amazing chat. Thank you for coming on the Spirit Box. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you, Elsa. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I certainly did. It's a fascinating incursion into a world that I'm not very knowledgeable about. So, really interesting one. If you want to know more, check out the show notes below. And happy exploring. And go and check your charts. Have you got Virgo rising? Okay, let's leave it there. Talk soon. Bye.